Is narcissistic personality disorder hereditary? And if you're new here, I actually have narcissistic personality disorder. So I do not believe that narcissistic personality disorder is hereditary, but I do believe that it can be passed down. And what I mean by this, let's just say your grandma or your grandpa are narcissists or toxic people. And guess what? They have kids who happen to be your mom or your dad. They treat them terribly, put them through trauma. And guess what? Your mom and dad treat you terribly, put you through trauma, cause you to be a narcissist. So as you can see in that situation right there, it's not hereditary, but it is passed down from generation to generation, and that's how it becomes a generational curse. So I know a lot of people want their love their grandma and grandpa had. They've been married for 50 years, they stuck through it, they've been through it all. But grandma and grandpa might be toxic because they ain't spoken to each other in the last 15 years. They still live together with the heat on 85, but you know what I mean, they ain't talking, they not intimate, they don't even sleep in the same bedroom. But they stayed together, and that's what y'all saw. That's what we all saw, so that's what we all wanted. See, it's passed down, it's not hereditary. What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of A Narcissist Explains. I am self-aware diagnosed narcissist Lee Hammock, and I use my platform to raise awareness for narcissistic personality disorder, validate the victims and survivors of said disorder, and get more people into therapy on both sides of the dynamic. If this is your first time seeing my face, this series right here is dedicated to where I just take my TikToks and my YouTube shorts and make them longer. They are 60 seconds or less over there. They're going to be a little bit longer here. So the skit, maybe not the skit, the video you just watched was my interpretation on whether or not narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is hereditary, or is it, or can it be passed down? I truly believe that narcissistic personality disorder is not hereditary, but it can be passed down, like I said in the video. I know a lot of people are going to comment on this and say studies have been done and shown that it can be passed down. There's a genome or something like that. Okay, I mean, that's cool. It maybe has some hereditary components to it, but I believe it's more passed down than hereditary, because if it's created through traumatic experiences, you know what I mean? So I feel like trauma, if it is passed down even a little bit, then trauma adds to that gene being expressed more. So, like I said in the skit right there, if your grandparents were narcissistic people, possibly you didn't know. You know, they've been together for 50 years. They had kids. They've been toxic to each other for 45, 50 years. You know what I mean? They've been toxic for a long time. But guess what? Because the old times that you couldn't get divorced, the old Christian people say you can't get divorced. You got to stand by your man, stand by your woman. So they stayed together, even though they hated each other, and they raised 2, 3 kids. One of those kids was your mama or your daddy. And guess what? They might turn into a narcissist as well. They've been put through trauma by being raised in a toxic environment. So guess what? They might put you through trauma. And guess what might happen to you? Or guess what might have happened to your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your husband or your wife? They might have been put through trauma, and they turn out to be a narcissist because it's passed down from generation to generation, because nobody puts a stop to it, because we're so dead set on staying together for images, and because of biblical stuff and things like that. Because I heard Kevin Samuels talk a lot about that. Modern women and traditional women and things like that. Times are easier when your grandma and your mom and your grandma in their 50s and the 60s, when you had to get married and you had to stand by your person. I'm like, yikes. Because times have been easier? Yeah, times were easier when people had less rights and less, I feel like that, right? I was like, Jesus Christ, that was a rough one right there. Because women typically couldn't leave the marriage. They didn't want to get divorced because they had to be so dependent upon a man that they couldn't leave. And guess what? If you're so unhappy, your husband is cheating on you, beating on you, your wife is cheating on you, you're unhappy, you can't get divorced, because the Bible says you can't get divorced. You stay together, and guess what that breeds? An environment of toxicity. It just does. And I know people are going to come on here, if some of y'all like Kevin Samuels. I don't hate Kevin Samuels. I just like a lot of stuff he says. But some of the stuff that just jumps off the page, when he says stuff like that, I'm just like, yikes. That's how you create generational curses, because guess what? The mama or your daddy, whoever the toxic one was, should have just kept that in the bedroom and not in front of the kids. I'm like, yikes. You can't. Oh my goodness. There's a lot to say right there. Maybe one day I'll chop it up with him. Hopefully, if my channel gets big enough, me and him will chop it up one day in a respectful manner, of course. I appreciate it. I actually like the guy. But yeah, I just feel like it can be passed down from generation to generation, because even I know people are going to ask me what happened to me. I'm not going to tell you exactly what I went through. I'm writing it in my book, but so I can tell you exactly what my dad went through. You know what I mean? So a lot of stuff that my issues are, daddy issues. So my dad didn't have his dad, and I didn't know that. You know what I mean? So my dad hasn't been in my life or whatever. He's been in my life. He just hasn't been an active, present father. He's more like a friend that you see playing basketball or something at the gym. Like, oh, that's my dad right there. Yeah. So he wasn't in my life. You know what I mean? But his dad wasn't in his life, so it's like a pattern. I was like, so what happened? I mean, because I don't have a very an active relationship with him, so I've never talked to him. So I got on Ancestry.com. I actually found his dad. And guess what? His dad died when he was like 7 or 8 years old. And guess what? Guess how he died? He unalived himself. He decided to get up at 5:30 on the Monday morning, and instead of going to work with his wife and 3 kids in the house, instead of just going to work, clocking in, he decided to go into the bathroom with a small caliber weapon and unalive himself. Because I read, because on Ancestry.com, it had his death certificate on there. His death certificate was on there, and it was present. I was just like, you zoomed in, it was just like, slur slide was the cause of death. I was like, what? Small caliber pistol, right to the dome. I was like, oh my goodness. And they made a lot of sense to me, and they helped me release a lot of anger and animosity I had towards my dad, because, like, look, if you're 7 or 8 years old, the person you look up to for love, care, and affection, your father, goes in the bathroom and unalives himself, you might internalize it and think it's because of you. You might have found him in there. You definitely heard it and woke up. You know what I mean? And so you grew up with abandonment issues. So you have kids, male kids, and guess what you do to them? You abandon them because that's the patterns you reflect. I don't know if my dad is a narcissist or not. Could he be? Yeah. Could he have some abandonment issues and not be a narcissist, or just be a toxic person? Possibly. But his dad unalived himself. So maybe he has abandonment issues and didn't know how to parent, didn't know how to be there for his kids. And so that caused him to not be there for me and my twin brother. You know what I mean? So and guess what happened to me? I have daddy issues. My brother didn't have the same thing I had going on, but like, I had daddy issues. But you see how it trickled down from my grandpa to my father to me. But guess what? It stops with me because I'm woke. Generational curse is going to end with me. The generational thing is going to end with me because I'm putting a stop to it now by going through therapy, by opening my mind up to therapy and ending the generational curse that has plagued my family for decades, for half a century probably. Because my dad is 50-something. My dad is like 50-something years old. I don't know exactly how old he is, but I know his trauma stuff happened about the same time my trauma stuff happened. So he's just disconnected. You know what I mean? But that's how it goes. That's how generational curse can start. And guess what? This is exactly how it can stop with somebody like the self-aware narcissist, Lee Hammock. So the mind works how the mind works. Like, it's going to continue working how it works and empower itself. But just if you're going through the situation now, if you're raising a child in a toxic environment because you're scared, it's a lot of different factors. Just say because you're scared, it's a lot of different factors. But like, if it's just because you're raising them in a toxic environment because of you're scared to lose that penis, or them cheeks, that's not enough to raise your kids in a toxic environment for some sex. It just ain't. It ain't enough, y'all. That ain't it. But anyways, y'all, I'm gonna keep this episode below the 8-minute mark, below the belt. I really truly appreciate every single one of y'all. We almost at 83,000 on here. We're close to 100. We are. I'm thankful for every one of y'all. Like and subscribe to the channel for more. Mental Healness is out. Peace.